Hello, EDSE 512. In this video, we're going to take a look at an example case study for Marin County present levels writing in an IEP document. Before we begin, a couple points to keep in mind. Please do not review this document and think that your submission for the present levels assignment has to look exactly like this. The case study will not provide every single detail that is mentioned in this document for this student. However, this will give you an idea of what a present levels section might look like so that you can review this and be prepared for other areas that you might write into present levels in an IEP in the future. Also remember that present levels of performance sections may look different depending on student eligibility, grade level or age, and the needs and services for that student. Again, needs drive goals, drive services. So to start, we always begin with the strengths. You will not want to say anything negative in this section. This is all about the positive traits that the student has. And even for a student who might be struggling significantly academically or behaviorally or both, we can always find things and brainstorm to fill this up with a really strong paragraph. This is a great way to start the meeting, so don't skim over this when you're doing an IEP. Really do hone in on those strengths. Make sure that the parent or guardian and the student hears them if the student is present as well. So this case study IEP lists several different strengths and areas of interest for the student. Alex is the name of the student in this example. Again, remember that IEPs may look different from district to district or state to state or even school to school, but that the main idea of present levels of performance section is to capture what is going on with the student. Literally, we are looking at the levels at present. How is the student performing? And that often may go past strictly academic content to address and discuss anything else that may be impacting the student's educational access. Oftentimes, you might see that as behavior. The student in this example is eligible for special education under SED, serious emotional disability, and SLD, specific learning disability. So you'll see that the areas of emphasis in this present levels section are based on his needs emotionally, behaviorally, as well as his needs academically in the school setting. So you will see emphasis on both. If you're creating an IEP for a student who's not eligible under SED and the mental health needs are not significant, then you would see less mental health information in present levels. This is just an example for you. So you can see that we begin with a little statement about the student and where he attends and his age or grade level. And then we dive into a review of the most recent evaluation. That's often a really good place to start because it does give you that background on the student. When we're writing IEPs, we always want to pass the stranger test. And as mentioned in previous discussions in this course, we need to know that if the student were to move out of the blue or be placed in a different home, or if the student were to go to a more restrictive facility, that we would have an IEP that truly does capture that student's needs and doesn't use a bunch of codes or acronyms. For instance, in this IEP, instead of just saying he's currently placed in SOAR, I say he is currently based in the Effective Needs Center-based program, parentheses, SOAR. So then if a new reader of this IEP is seeing the acronym SOAR later in the document, it can help them to understand what programming that entails and what needs the student must have in order to be placed in such a level of programming. You can see that there's a review of the evaluation for the cognitive component as well as the academics. And in this upper paragraph also, we're addressing social emotional. Please realize also that there is never a perfect IEP. There is never a perfect present levels document. So I'm pretty sure with all that you are learning that some of you might be able to go through this document and point out things that should be fleshed out or changed or added or made more clear. That is the beauty of this collaborative format and process. The IEP can always be improved, and we should always be working on finding ways to improve it, comparing notes with colleagues, with district level administrators, with building level administrators and department chair to ensure that our IEPs are on the right track and that they are comprehensive to capture the needs of the student. That is so crucial. So here we've got grades listed. One thing that can also be valuable is to give anecdotal information or some summary statements regarding the reason for some lower grades. So in some IEPs, you might list a grade for a class and then say, parentheses, frequent missing assignments, or parentheses, attendance issues, to explain why is this grade so low. Perhaps the student is scoring very poorly on assessments, and then you might have to step back, take a look at the accommodations, and that's something that could be visited with the IEP team. Do we need to consider extended time? Do we need to consider a card for notes for the student that could be created before an assessment in a given content area? So remember, this present levels section is going to give the evidence that the team needs to identify what should be put into place, removed, and or adjusted to make this IEP the most effective document possible based on the student's needs and changes and areas for growth. Attendance is listed here too. Every school has a different way that they list out attendance, but the bottom line is that it's valuable to know how frequently the student is present rather than absent. And if there is an issue with attendance, this can definitely impact educational access. And the attendance problem could be in relationship to the disability or the eligibility category. So for instance, if a student is eligible under SED and is significantly impacted and has multiple placements or hospitalizations, or perhaps struggles so much with depression that the student's unable to get out of bed to come to school oftentimes, or there's a medication management issue going on, those could all be factors that contribute to attendance. So little notes about that are valuable, not only because it creates and paints a better and clearer picture of the student and the current performance, but because it provides that formal documentation within the IEP, so that then even years later, if anybody is investigating what has happened or why the student excelled or did not succeed in a given area, we can look back and say, well, in that class, this was happening, but in this class, that was happening. Here's what was working. Here's what was not. For teacher feedback, what might be helpful is to create a little form that teachers can fill out. You can send it out to general education or special education teachers. It's great to get input from as many teachers as possible. So in this form, we address under teacher reports the strengths of the student. You can see multiple notes from different content area teachers. And then there's also a component where they can list areas for growth for that student. So we'll see with Alex, as I've got this up on the screen, you can pause it and look through any details that you choose in this document. You can see that Alex is having attendance issues or just engagement issues in general. One teacher states that there's some physical misconduct with the brother and that they might become aggressive during class. So these are concerns or areas that the student could grow. And then an overall behavior and engagement rating out of 5, 5 being the highest possible, can provide you with another valuable data point. You can ask each teacher for this rating and then average out the scores. If you happen to work frequently with the student and have the student in class also, you can add your own feedback. This is a classroom observation. You'll want to include this as well. So you want to have as much detail as possible. You can address things that occur with peers in this observation if they're relevant to the behavior or access or conduct of the student you're observing, but you obviously would never include any names or identifying information for those peers. So this is a section that just includes detail. You can do a percentage of time on task. This is a really lovely observation, probably because it is a PE class that this student, it seems, did enjoy. Again, if there's relevant medical information for a student, present levels is a good place to include it. This student, you can see that there have been several different hospitalizations and psychiatric placements for the issues that are related to the serious emotional disability eligibility. So that's valuable for a team receiving the student or for another person, a new provider coming in at your setting to be able to review and understand we have a background of this or that. What are the diagnoses? And then it is also helpful to include disciplinary action. Again, we're not trying to be negative in the present levels, but we really need to capture the full picture. And if we don't have this all on paper in writing, it's difficult to justify decisions that might take place. For instance, a change of placement, and that could be either to a more restrictive and separate setting Or it could be to something that is less restrictive. It could be to mild moderate programming, or even to a point where this center-based is no longer needed and there's less of that paraeducator support, more independence for the student. So again, we just need to paint the full picture. If we see frequent referrals and then those are going down in frequency quite a bit with a sustained period of time in which that decrease is occurring, that's really great data. So do take that building level data if you have access to it, or you can collaborate with an administrator. And then we move into the IEP goal updates. So you can see we'll list the goal, list the progress towards the goal. Please do not ever update an IEP goal without putting a number in there. If you can possibly find a percentage measurement, we really need data for these. I have seen IEP progress reports or goal updates where a provider might just say, oh, he's doing great. He's been really wonderful. And that does not show us any measurable growth. And all of the IEP goals will have a number in them, a percentage of trials or a percent of instances or a percentage for accuracy. And we need to show where we stand numerically in comparison to the baseline and in comparison to the target. So please be detailed. You will always want at least one number. And you'll see the same in the academic goals. Specific examples in your updates can be very helpful. It never hurts to take a writing sample from a student and just maybe snap a photo or get a copy of it. And then you can go through and instead of saying that there were accuracy concerns with spelling, you can actually list out several misspelled words. So you see that that has been done with those spelling issues in December of 19 and a couple instances of sentence writing for this next report here at the top of this page, taking a look at what's been going on for the spring, for example. Mathematics goal, same thing. You'll see percentage of accuracy for that report. And if you ever need to click did not work on goal in a situation, it is essential that you are very detailed regarding the reason for that selection, because it's very important that students are receiving IEP services for all of their goals consistently to meet the minutes outlined and to meet the needs of that student. For instance, in this example document, if the student has completely fallen off attendance with remote learning, then we are not going to lie and make up data. So that could be a situation where, unfortunately, a team might have to say, from this point to this point, we did not work on goal because we've not been able to access the student or the parent. And that's obviously another issue for collaboration and a problem-solving process. But otherwise, you're always going to want to say progress made, insufficient progress made on each goal, or goal met. And that's obviously what we would hope to see. A summary of health information is included here. Oftentimes the school nurse will provide that and can gather that from a family with a form. This is an example which would be only in the 15 plus IEP, but this is an example of the transition interview. So you can see the student answered many questions regarding involvement around the house, plans for post-secondary education and training, and career ambitions. Finally, in this part of the document, you'll want to address the student's needs and the impact of the disability. So please, when you do this, we don't want to just state the obvious. We need to go into detail. Where are we seeing the concern? What supports will benefit this student? The needs drive the goals, drive the services. And again, keep that thread throughout. Okay, and tie that back if you do have a 15 plus, which this is a transition 15 plus IEP, tie it back to that post-secondary goal. Even if a student is not at 15 plus, it's never harmful to have a conversation about objectives for the future or career interests. It's great to start thinking about these things and exploring them. So keep in mind what's developmentally appropriate for each student, and I hope that this has been a helpful example for you.